good evening, this is Hound Dog Steve. How are you this evening? Well, glad to see you out there, and a warm welcome to any new visitors. If you do enjoy this information, please comment, like and subscribe below, and also please do share my videos if you can. It really does help when you do that. I came across an article the other day from the Gatestone Institute, and it really does sum up the situation in France as we speak, which is a kind of final self-immolation of that country. This problem goes back a long way. Of all the countries, the main countries that colonized the world, France was right up there with Spain and Britain, and France of course has had a colonial attitude towards Africa, and North Africa in particular, for a very long time, and it has used North Africa basically as a recruitment center for cheap labor to do a lot of the hard work and menial tasks that French citizens did not want to do. They never allowed these people full citizenship and this kind of stuff, and so they have formed their own cultural centers within France. And of course, with supply side economics and moving the industrial heart out into the Far East and cutting out the good jobs, forcing people to move into the country, gentrification of the cities, it's led to a general balkanization of the country. And so of course, as it gets into in this article, the cultural center of France is being lost to the noise all around it, and I don't think it will ever be basically regained, because when you look at these three things, they make the triangle of fire. You have a government that cannot withstand the burden of the number of people it has to look after. That is all the air that you need to get the fire going. The fuel is the Balkan groups who are now competing with each other for resources within the country. And the spark is the inflation, where people can no longer afford to pay for their basic day-to-day needs. And when you put the triangle of fire together, you are bound to get an explosion. And that, I believe, will be the self-immolation of France. And it's sad to see, because one of the things that we really celebrate now with the word diversity is everyone's individual culture. We even have things like cultural appropriation, where you're ashamed if you try and don somebody else's culture, because we hold culture so high in esteem. And to see some of these cultures forced into extinction, I know that these countries did colonize, but that was the leaders of the country. The people of the country have their own culture, distinct French ways of doing things, as the British do, as the Germans do, as the Americans do, as the Canadians do. And that is neither good nor bad. That is just the way people go about their everyday business, as we see with all cultures. And so to override one culture from another, we're all going to lose in the end. Okay, so I don't want to go on too long here with a discussion, but I'd rather read you the article, because it is quite interesting, and I think you'll find it quite enlightening as to the cultural situation in France right now. Okay, here we go. The Gatestone Institute International Policy Council. The Suicide of France by Giulio Miotti. Frenchness is disappearing and being replaced by a kind of balkanization of enclaves not communicating with one another. This is not a good recipe. The more the French elites, with their disposable incomes and cultural leisure, cloister themselves in their enclaves, the less likely it is that they will understand the everyday impact of failed mass immigration and multiculturalism. The globalized, boboized, bourgeois, bohemian upper classes are filling the new citadels as in medieval France, and are voting en masse for Macron. They have developed a single way of talking and thinking that allows the dominant classes to substitute for the reality of a nation subject to severe stress and strain the fabled of a kind and welcoming society. Christophe Guilly, Twilight of the Elites, Yale University Press, 2019. Recent Yellow Vest movements, whose demonstrators have been protesting every Saturday in Paris for months, is a symbol of the division between France's working class and the gentrified process. Pictured, Yellow Vest protesters occupy the steps leading to the Basilica du Sacré-Cœur on March 23, 2019 in Paris, France. Regarding France in 2019, it can no longer be denied that a momentous and hazardous transformation, a great switch, is in the making, observed the founder and president of the Jean-Jacques Rousseau Institute, Michael Garfinkel. He was mourning the passing of France as a distinct country, or at least as the Western Judeo-Christian nation it had hitherto been presumed to be. A recent cover story in the weekly Le Point called it the Great Upheaval. Switch or upheaval, the days of France as we knew it are numbered. The society has lost its cultural centre of gravity. The old way of life is fading and close to extinction. Frenchness is disappearing and being replaced by a kind of balkanization of enclaves not communicating with one another. For the country most affected by Islamic fundamentalism and terrorism, this is not a good recipe. The French switch is also becoming geographical. France now appears split between ghettos for the rich and ghettos for the poor, according to an analysis by the electoral map by France's largest newspaper, Le Monde. In the poorest sector, 6 out of 10 newly settled households have a person born abroad, notes Le Monde. A kind of abyss now separates peripheral France, small towns, suburbs and rural areas from the globalized metropolis of the bourgeois bohemians, or bobos. The more the French elites with their disposable incomes and cultural leisure cloister themselves in their enclaves, the less likely it is they will understand the everyday impact of failed mass immigration and multiculturalism. A recent poll reflects those two Frances that do not cross or speak to each other, observed Sylvain Crepin of the University of Tours. In analysing the success of Marine Le Pen's National Rally Party in the recent European Parliament election, Le Pen and President Emmanuel Macron, the two winners in the election, speak to the completely different sociological groups. In the Paris suburbs, Aulnay-sous-Bois, Sèvres, Villepinte, Seine-Saint-Denis, the far-right National Rally has been experiencing a boom. In the cities, Le Pen is largely behind. She came 5th in Paris, 3rd in Lille, 4th in Lyon. According to Crepin, these cities will be protected from the National Rally's vote by their sociological structuring. It gives credit to the populist talk that diagnoses a disconnected elite. This view backs the idea of a sociological break, which is not completely wrong. On one side of this break are towns such as Dreux, which Valeurs Actuelles called the city that prefigures the France of tomorrow. On one side, a royal city with the vestige of a history believing that all things are being changed, millenarian. On the other, cities imbued with drug trafficking and Islam. The bourgeois of the city sent a vote for Macron, the small whites for Le Pen. On the other side is Paris. All the metropolises of the world know the same fate. This is where wealth flows and where the alliance between the winners of globalization and their servants, immigrants who have come to serve the new masters of the world, keep their children, bring their pizzas, or work in their restaurants, writes the distinguished social commentator Eric Zemmour in Le Figaro. From now on, he writes, Paris is a global city, not really a French city. The globalized, boboized bourgeois bohemian upper classes, according to one of France's most respected authors, Christophe Guillouet, are filling the new citadels as in medieval France and are voting en masse for Macron. They have developed a single way of talking and thinking that allows the dominant classes to substitute for the reality of a nation subject to severe stress and strain the fable of a kind and welcoming society. Guillouet has been criticised by some French media for addressing this reality. The recent Yellow Vest movement, whose demonstrators have been protesting every Saturday in Paris for months against President Macron's reforms, is a symbol of this division between the working class and the gentrified progressives. According to Guillouet, it is a social and cultural shock. This shock, according to the French philosopher Alain Finkielkraut, consists of the ugliness of peripheral France and its effects on concrete lives. The sadness of these working classes who have lost not only a standard of living, but also a cultural referent. In France there is now a perversive sense of dispossession. Marine Le Pen's party won more than twice as many electoral departments as Macron. Le Pen won in the depressed and the deindustrialized areas of northern, central and eastern France that spawned the Yellow Vests. Since moving to France in 2002, I've watched the country complete a cultural revolution, Simon Cooper recently wrote in the Financial Times. Catholicism has almost died out. Only 6% of French people now habitually attend Mass. Though not as thoroughly as its longtime rival church communism, the non-white population has kept growing. Macron, Cooper explains, is a symbol of a new individualized, globalized, irreligious society. France's flight from Catholicism is so evident that a new book, L'Archipel Français, naissant d'une nation multiple et divisée, by pollster Jérôme Fourquet, has described the cultural failing of the French society as a post-Christian era. French society's displacement from its Catholic matrix has become almost total. The country, Fourquet states, is now implementing its own de-Christianization, and there is only one strong substitute at the horizon. There are today already, according to a new academic study, as many Muslims as Catholics among 18 to 29-year-olds in France, and Muslims represent 13% of the population of France's large cities, more than double the national average. Sometimes Muslim feelings of community solidarity appear to have been taking advantage of this fragmentation by creating their own ghetto of Sharia. A report from Institut Montaigne, the Islamic Factory, has detailed the radicalization of the French Muslim society. Instead of integration, assimilation and Europeanization, Muslim extremists in France are pursuing multiculturalism, separation and partition. The enclaves of immigrants at the edges of French cities, posits Gilles Capel in his book La Fracture, foment a rupture in the values with French society and a will to subvert it. People do not want to live together, said France's former Interior Minister Gérard Collomb in comments reported by Valeurs Actuelles. This fracture was noted again in the same publication. 4 out of 10 boys in Seine-Saint-Denis have Arab-Muslim first names. Pollster Jérôme Fourquet revealed in a new study 18% of newborn babies in France have an Arab-Muslim name. France's great switch is underway. As the great philosopher Alain Finkielkraut recently wrote, the Notre Dame fire is neither an attack nor an accident, but a suicide attempt. Giulio Miodi, cultural editor for Il Foglio, is an Italian journalist and author. Well, I hope you enjoyed listening to that as much as I enjoyed reading it and the information that I derived from it. And if you did, please comment, like and subscribe below. As I said, please share. And in the meantime, this is Hound Dog Steve signing off, wishing you a very pleasant evening, and we'll talk very, very shortly. You take care now. See ya. Bye.